Trojans Talk Research is a monthly spotlight on the research interests of Troy's faculty, presented by Troy University's Office of Sponsored Programs. This month will feature Dr. Shannon Dadd of the College of Education's Teacher Education Department. Dr. Dadd will discuss the impact of immersive STEM environments and professional development on teacher motivation and efficacy to implement STEM education.
Good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank you for attending today. Those of you that are here live, those of you that are watching. My name is Joe Johnson. I'm the chair of the Department of Teacher Education, and I'm here to introduce the speaker for today's Trojans Talk Research. I'm here to introduce Dr. Shannon Dadd. Dr. Dadd has been with Troy University. This is her 6th year. She is an assistant professor in the Department of Teacher Education. She is responsible for methods courses in teaching science and teaching STEM. The focus of her talk today is going to be in her research into STEM specifically, but she does a whole lot of other things that support the Department of Teacher Education in the university. She is nationally recognized for her STEM research. She has received a national award from her national organization in STEM. She just got back from the National Teachers of Science Association national conference, where she did a presentation. She has received grant funding to create a working STEAM, but now we call it STREAM lab down on the first floor that is fully outfitted and state-of-the-art and really impressive for the state of Alabama. She is active in leadership. She is the secondary P-12 coordinator for the Department of Teacher Education. She serves as the chair for the Graduate Academic Governance Committee, GAGC. She is on the assessment committee. She just does a lot of good things, but the number one thing she does well is support students here at Troy, and we are proud that she has this opportunity to share her research. Dr. Dadd.
Thank you. I didn't realize I did so much. Thank you all for coming this afternoon to hear me talk about my latest research project. I really appreciate it. And you'll see that I do get fired up about this. I'm very passionate about what I do here in the Department of Teacher Ed, specifically working with pre-service teachers and teachers. So again, I'm Shannon Dadd, and for this particular research project, I have a team of colleagues here that helped me with this. Dr. Evans, Dr. McCormick, and Dr. Kane, who are not here, but they did help me a lot with this throughout the data and the analysis portions that we're going to talk about. But since a lot of you here may not know me that well, let me just give you a little bit of background about me so that you can kind of see that what led to this project in particular. I was a middle school, high school science teacher, and I really love science. I grew up loving science. Always thought I was going to be a doctor, just a different kind now. And now I currently work here in my STEM focus. I usually work with pre-service teachers, teachers out in the field. I also like to do a lot with gender and minorities in STEM for my research. Today in particular, I'm going to be talking about our pre-service teachers here, our elementary ed majors that take my methods course. Back in the day, I used to be the state STEM lead for Alabama, and I particularly worked with a lot of after-school programs. My position was very new and fluid. They didn't really know what my job was. They told me to make it up. And so all they knew is the goal was to get after-school programs around the state to implement more STEM. So the first place I began doing that is I really needed to understand where our after-school educators, where their beliefs were regarding STEM. And that was about 8 to 10 years ago. And since then, I've just really built on this, working with after-school teachers, and now that's led into my pre-service teachers. So that's kind of like the background of where I've led up to this particular project. Regarding our pre-service teachers, when I started teaching this methods course, I realized that our pre-service teachers were really lost when it came to STEM. They didn't really know what it was. They didn't really know what the difference between science education was and STEM education. And so that kind of got my gears going about where I might want to take this and what I could do to really motivate my elementary ed majors to feel more confident with STEM. That's really ultimately the goal I wanted in my teaching, is I wanted them to feel comfortable teaching STEM, knowing what it was, what it looked like, so that when they graduated here, they could go into their future careers and do it correctly in the classroom, because we do see that a lot of teachers don't do STEM education in their classes, and that's really comes down to the time it takes to do it. The time it takes to do these hands-on activities, project-based learning, it can take days to weeks, you know, or even over an hour or two. And we know that in our lower elementary classrooms, the real big push is for math and literacy education. So they have a hard time feeling confident how to marry the two, integrate literacy with STEM. So again, elementary teachers' lack of understanding about STEM is a big problem, and knowing what the engineering design process is. That's called EDP, so you might hear me mention that a few times throughout today. But those two things go hand in hand. You can't have one without the other. Back in the original research when I was a STEM lead, and I surveyed teachers around the state, we had about 87% of our educators say that they did STEM with their students in the classroom. And then when I asked them about what engineering design was, only 67% of our teachers said they did not even know what that was. So that really told me there was a disconnect there, that could they truly be doing STEM if they didn't even know what the engineering design process was. And that's kind of what's led up to that initial research project, and that's what I've built on since there. Also talking with our teachers, we know there's a lack of confidence and efficacy regarding just elementary teaching in general with science. All right, so science and STEM. And then we know that understanding engineering design is essential for them to feel confident and knowledgeable to implement STEM, integrated STEM into their classrooms. So that's the problem here. So what we really need to do is develop their self-efficacy regarding STEM and science education, and that's going to help them feel more confident and knowledgeable to do that in their future classrooms. And so this particular research project is about helping educator prep programs, which I call EPPs, you'll see that in here, have dedicated STEM curricula. A lot of programs don't have that. If you're in education or elementary ed, you'll see across the nation a lot of programs don't even implement STEM methods courses into their curricula. So this project is also about the need for that, understanding the need for that so we can develop that efficacy for those pre-service teachers. So first of all, we have to be on board with what STEM is and what that looks like in the classroom. When I talked about STEM with educators, not just in our state, but everywhere, the biggest thing that they tell me is they're not sure what that really is. What does that look like? There's a lot of different perspectives regarding STEM, a political perspective, an economical perspective, an educational perspective. And that's what we're going to focus on today, is the educational perspective of what integrated STEM looks like. And that's the first step to coming together on a consensus of a definition. Once a school district or a school system or a state does that, we're going to see improvement in STEM education across the board. So this is going to be the definition that I tend to use with my method students so that they can go forth into the world with that same definition. And it's the intentional integration of those 4 disciplines together to solve real-world problems using engineering design. All right, and then I like to focus on my students about it's an approach to problem solving. At the very root of it, STEM education is just an approach to problem solving. And I always tell my pre-service teachers, it's not about creating generations of little engineers. All right, I think engineers are important and they're amazing, but not everybody's cut out to be an engineer, nor do we want everyone to be an engineer, right? But regardless, exposure to STEM opportunity helps develop 21st century skills, right? Problem solving skills, collaboration, teamwork skills, and every person can benefit from that. Children need that exposure so they can carry that over into adulthood, into whatever career field they do go in. And so that's really what we want, or why we want to expose our children to STEM-based activities. So once I have my teachers or pre-service teacher think about it as an approach to problem solving and not getting too afraid or fearful of that word engineering, that also helps with their motivation. So for this particular study, I had 3 research questions. How do pre-service elementary teachers' comfort levels and efficacy progress throughout the methods course in the EPP program? How do their comfort levels and efficacy change post-graduation? And then what challenges and successes do elementary teachers face in the classroom regarding STEM implementation? So for this study, what I did is for the past several years, I've collected data and I followed my students into their first couple of years of teaching. And then resurveyed them and did focus groups with them to collect the data to see were they doing what they believed to be the right thing to do when they were in our program? Do they carry that into their career? And if they don't, why don't they do that? If they know STEM education is important, why do they still not feel the need, or why can't they implement it once they're in their careers? So that's kind of what we were looking for in regards to this particular study. What you're going to see today is a preliminary data and analysis that we've done. This is ongoing. I'm going to be following them through their first 5 years into the field. So hopefully we'll have some new data and some changes, some positive changes, once I follow them all the way through. Informing and supporting educators, both our pre-service educators and our in-school time teachers, in how to implement integrated STEM is very important. It's essential to engage in our students. We can't engage our students into STEM or convince or help them pursue STEM pathways to go into those STEM fields without first giving our teachers the support and knowledge to know how to do that correctly. This can also inform future EPP programs. Like I said before, professional development for teachers that are in school, as well as some policy change. We'll talk about policy a little bit later on and the impact policy has on implementing STEM. So this was a mixed methods approach. This particular research project, I did both qualitative and quantitative analysis that conducted of surveys with Likert scale items, as well as interviews and open-ended questions. So what I did for this particular presentation today, you're going to see my spring 2021 to spring 2022 data. What I did is in each semester of this methods course, I implemented a pre-survey and a post-survey. So their first day of class, before they do anything or learn even what STEM is, they get the pre-survey. And the very last thing they do after their final exam is take the post-survey. And then the post-graduation students that I followed into the field, they again take that survey again. It's the same survey for all 3. And I did this over 3 semesters for this particular presentation today. Our participants were our pre-service elementary educators that are in our program and specifically that take me for their methods course. These are our Block 3 students, so this is a semester right before they intern. They're enrolled in EDU 3308, which is our STEM methods course, and they have graduated from our program, again, taking me, and they're either in the year 1, finishing up year 1 of teaching, or just starting year 2 of teaching. So these are the participants of this particular study. Immersive classroom was a big part of this study. It's important to model what they could have or will see out in their future classrooms to implement STEM. And so I thought that was very important to this study about how this experience and the support can impact their efficacy. In the classroom, this is down in 111 downstairs. This is the Stream Lab. I got a grant, I think a total all in so far around $60,000 to get supplies for this room. And the purpose of it is our students here, a lot of them are first generation college students. And for science and STEM, there's a lot of prep that goes into it. And if you know a teacher or you're gonna become a teacher or your mom's a teacher, your dad's a teacher, you know that a lot of teachers pay out of pocket for a lot of their supplies. And science and STEM education being so heavy on prep, it can be very, very expensive to get the supplies. So the first thing I wanted to do to make sure that my students really got the most out of my methods course is eliminate that need to go out and spend their own money. I wanted to provide them with every resource so they didn't have to worry about the financial aspect to their lesson plans. They could just focus on learning and absorbing what STEM truly is, and not worry about the expense. So I've created a classroom here that is packed full of supplies and models what a classroom should look like out in their school. So you can see that's very colorful and bright, vibrant. You can see that from wall to wall there, tons of books, tons of resources, everything they can use. I have a library set up by content area for all the different sciences so that when they write a lesson plan that they can find a book that's more geared toward that particular topic. This is all also digitally online, so they can look at all my resources, books, anything, and see what's been checked out and what has not been checked out. You can see here, this is some students and teachers engaging in my methods class and professional development. But really I was showing you this picture too so you can see in the background all the supplies I have. These tables are marker board tables so they can write and design on them. And then each table has cubbies packed full of supplies. So we have everything we need. My students have everything they need. So they never have to worry about when they're writing a lesson plan, how realistic is it due to supplies? Because, I mean, just popsicle sticks alone, which is a really common resource that we use, or material we use for STEM, I probably have close to 30, 40, 50,000 popsicle sticks along. And that is not an exaggeration. They're cabinets, they're everywhere, they're overflowing. But yeah, so this is just to give you an idea of like the materials that my students use and how that can impact their motivation, or so that you know that they're not limited by that. So next is the survey tool itself. The first part of the survey, I have some Likert scale items here, and it asks about how comfortable you are with the following. So I have each of the content areas that STEM, and I just focus on STEM specifically and not stream, but science content, math, engineering, technology. So how do you feel about those particular disciplines of STEM? And then how comfortable you are with planning STEM, facilitating STEM, facilitating computer science, and facilitating activities involving robotics. The second part of the survey asks them how likely they are to implement engineering-focused activities, implement computer science, implement robotics, and implement technology in their future classrooms. For the open-ended responses, I always like to ask them, what is STEM? All right, that's a really important question for this research study to gauge their perceptions of what STEM is. How do they define STEM? Always they can tell me what it stands for: science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And I'm like, great, that's what it stands for, but what is it? Like, what is it in its essence? So that's a really important question we like to dig into. I asked them about what is the engineering design process. Do they really understand what that is? Because that's going to tell me, is there a disconnect there? Do they know the relationship there? Do you think it's important for students to do STEM? Why or why isn't it important? What are you most afraid of pertaining to this class? I like to dig into their fears regarding STEM. What do you hope to gain from this class? And what are you excited to learn? And we had some very interesting things come up in our results regarding these questions. For the qualitative analysis, we did in vivo coding. Members of my team helped me with this. And what they did, instead of doing a line-by-line analysis, they looked at things kind of as a whole and focused on words and phrases that were relevant to the participants' meaning making. They did this every few lines of data to do in vivo coding, and then they created a table of those codes, all right, with quotes directly from the students. And then what Dr. Evans did is she clustered those codes by similarity and try to find meaning or and group them together based on those similarities. And then we looked for trends in those. All right, and a lot of the themes that you're going to see that came up are direct quotes or quotes taken from those students. And then for our quantitative analysis, we used SPSS and we did ANOVA test on those Likert scale items, comparing different groups, and we grouped them by their dependent variables there. So let's talk about the results, because this is the most interesting part. So for our qualitative results, we had about 81 from these 3 semesters of students that I took who participated in the survey, and this was all volunteer. I did not require my students to do this, only if they wanted to. And for our pre-survey students, so these are the surveys that went out on the first day of class where they have no exposure yet or limited exposure to STEM, or at least me and my methods of STEM. So some of the themes that came up was very interesting. There's hesitation in what STEM means, right? So STEM meaning hesitation. They know the acronym, they know what it stands for, and then mostly when they think about STEM, they think about robotics or coding or computer science, and it's a lot more than that. And then of course they connect it to hands-on learning. The next theme that was present is that STEM is engineering and building products or problem solving. All right, we think a lot about that too, or that's nothing new. When they think about STEM, or some of the teachers I've talked to, they automatically think engineer, and that's why they are also fearful. Because our elementary teachers, they went to school to be an elementary teacher. They didn't go to school to be an engineer, and so they're very fearful of that sometimes. They know that STEM is needed for the future and that there's a push for STEM. And then they know that, and then there's the theme of fears. They have fears and what's required of that. So that was some of our pre-survey items. And so what I hope to see is when my students finish my class, we see more positive themes. We see less hesitation and less fear. If I'm being a good teacher, that's what I hope, right? So in our post-survey results, they had more ease in the classroom. It went better than they thought. So that's good. They know that STEM challenges students and supports critical thinking, and they saw that firsthand when they did their STEM lessons. And now they're more confident in defining STEM. They do hear me say a lot, it's an approach to problem solving, and that's how they should think about it. So in our post results on the last day of class, there's definitely themes or more confidence regarding what STEM is and defining that. So that's good to know. But how do they feel a year or two after they graduate, when they're in the weeds of it, when they're in the thick of it? How do they still feel about STEM? So the major themes that came up here in our postgraduates, roadblocks to STEM. Roadblocks. So there's instructional realities, the realities of everyday teaching and trying to fit that in. They know that STEM is beneficial. They still believe that STEM is beneficial, but are they implementing it? Why and why not? And this one's great, STEM. It doesn't take a rocket scientist. Again, they still believe that STEM is doable and it's important. And so I like that they still have that belief and that confidence in themselves to do STEM. But what do our survey items, our Likert scale items say? We'll look at that in just a moment. Here's a few outliers. I wanted to put this in here because I wanted you to see some of the quotes of what some of our students are saying. I fear not being able to create a STEM lesson. So that's still a fear that's present. It's not fear about implementing STEM, but just the lesson planning component of that. And that's very common with our students. Next, they are still nervous about implementing a successful STEM lesson. Are the kids going to get something out of it? Are they going to learn the content through this hands-on activity? I know once we come out of college, it's very common for some of our students to go in teaching as if they've been taught in college, right? The lecture, right? So we got to pull them back from the lecture method of teaching and do more hands-on. And then not fully understanding still how to incorporate STEM in the lesson. So we still have some outliers there of those results. For our survey questions, the Likert scale items, I wanted to show you how we compared those. We compared our pre and post survey, so the first day of class to the last day of class, and analyzed the significance there. And then for the second group, we did the post-STEM group. So the very last day of class to our postgraduates to see if there was any change. So those are our two analysis groups for this next set of results. So first day of class compared to the last day of class. If you look at these items on comfortability or comfort level, there was a significant difference across the board in all 8 categories. All right, so that says that there was a significant change, right? There's a huge increase in their comfort levels with science, math, engineering, and technology. There was a huge increase or significant increase in STEM planning, implementing, coding, and robotics, which is what we want to see, right? From the beginning of a class to an end of the class, their beliefs and comfort levels did change significantly. So that's a good outcome. And then in regards to the last day, or these 4 items, before the EPP course versus immediately after, this is about implementation. How likely are you to implement these? From first day of class to last day of class, significantly increase their desire to implement these in their future careers. But what about right after teaching? They go to internship, they graduate, they get their first job, and like I said earlier, they're in the thick of it, right? In the daily routine and rigor of what teaching really entails. Well, in our survey, there was no significant increases in their beliefs, all right? Only in these 2 categories. They were more comfortable with math and implementing math and robotics. So there wasn't a change in anything else post-graduation. They still held the same beliefs, and they were just as strong or comfortable with those in their first 2 years of teaching. So quantitatively, there was no significant difference other than these 2 areas. I'm not that surprised with the math, especially when we have a huge focus on math and literacy. But I was very surprised how much more confident or comfortable they were with robotics. Very interesting to me. So really, what does this all mean, tying it all together? Well, a dedicated STEM curriculum significantly improved their perceptions of STEM, their comfort levels of our pre-service teachers and all the different components. And what I think this is due to is the immersive environment I created and the support I gave and the resources. Also, after completing the course, they were more willing to implement STEM in the classroom. They were more willing to do that, but what we saw in the data, they really didn't do that. They didn't do that. And when you look at the quotes and the themes, it's mainly due to the hardships that were present. And some of the hardships that came up in the results were lack of funding, resources and support, the demands of teaching, and then current demands by the State Department. So we do have literacy and numeracy mandates for the State Department. For those of you not in education, the new Alabama State mandate that I do have later on in this that just got passed is about kids needing to be on reading level and not being able to progress past 3rd grade. And what that does is it really hinders what a teacher can do in other content areas when they don't know how to properly integrate literacy with science, with social studies, and with STEM. So even though our students, after they left the program and graduated, they were still just as confident and thought STEM was beneficial, they're still not able to do it. But there are some limitations with this research. It wasn't perfect, and these are preliminary results. And this is still ongoing. Our sample size, if you notice that in our postgraduate survey, we only had 19 of our students fill that out. So we are still getting and collecting more participants to get some of that postgraduate work, and maybe we'll see some significant differences in some of those items. Also, the length of time of our postgraduates in field. I followed them their first year and maybe the start of their second year in the field. But we know if you're an educator that the first couple of years is where you're trying to get into a routine, you're trying to nail down classroom management, your content, your curricula, and all of that. So that's why for the next phase of this, I'm going to continue to their first 5 years in the field. Once they have that down, once they're good with classroom management, once they have a few years under their belt of experience. Now can they implement STEM? Now can they figure out how to integrate literacy with STEM or science? We'll see. And then the survey tool itself, it didn't ask about support and resources. I made that connection through my own conversations. So moving forward, I would like to focus in our focus groups and the survey tool about support and resources and how that ties in to their efficacy. So this talks about the next phase and where this research is going. If you'll look at this chart here on the left, this talks about time spent on different content areas in the elementary classroom. And if you can think back to your own experiences in school, you probably experienced this yourself. There was a lot of focus on math and literacy, but not so much on social studies and science. So you can see significantly lower in social studies and science. And I suspect that to drop even more here soon. All right, and this was last done in 2008. Like I said, Literacy Act 2019 523 is that new literacy mandate by the state about students reading on third grade level. And just with my informal conversations with educators around the state, what that does is it puts more pressure on the teacher to make sure they're only focusing on literacy. And when we only focus on literacy, especially with inexperienced or new teachers, that's going to drive out social studies, science, and of course STEM integrated activities. So also, with that being said, no science and social studies in K-3. It is known that there are some school systems in the state where their principals are not allowing the teaching of science in K-3. And that's problematic. That's problematic. We need science literate students in our future. There is a push for STEM and students to go into STEM, but by the time they get exposed to science around 4th grade, they're 10 years behind their peers in other countries. And so that's a huge issue in our STEM fields. It drives not only the gender and the minority gap that we see in STEM fields, but overall, compared to other countries, we produce less engineers for our home country. There is a statistic out there that I don't know right off the top of my head for this presentation, but I used to present on it. The students that go into engineering and STEM pathways, a large portion of those, it's almost over 50%, are foreign. And so what that means is when they graduate our programs here in the United States, they go back to their home countries. And so we still have that huge gap in engineering and STEM fields here in the United States. So again, as you can see, there's a disconnect there. We're driving STEM education, but not supporting teachers or students in those critical formative years when they most need it. So next phase. That all being said, with the drive and the gap in our STEM fields and pursuing STEM pathways, and our 4th graders, their first exposure being 10 years behind their peers. What I would like to do is a deeper dive into our candidates, following them longer in their field to really determine the impact that their daily career has on STEM education and STEM implementation, and really dive into the mandates, the new mandates that are out after they've been into effect for the past several years. What impact does that have not only on their teaching of anything, but really how that impacts their beliefs regarding STEM. And I do believe that this has the potential to impact policy and drive positive changes in how we support not only our teachers in the field, but our pre-service teachers. I believe that it just takes one small step, and that's what I try to do through my classroom methods class. The more students I can reach, even if it's a nugget that they leave with, or a resource, or just a little bit of motivation on different ways they can implement STEM throughout their day, that's a benefit, that's a plus. And this can inform other education prep programs on how they can put out more teachers that are more comfortable and have self-efficacy to implement STEM in different ways. Through this research over the past few years, it's really increased my desire to create multiple pathways to get more teachers out there comfortable with STEM. I know in my current methods class, I only do pre-service elementary teachers, but in the past several years, I've been building a master's degree where other teachers in social studies, English, math, phys ed even. Anyone can come back and get this master's degree, integrated STEM master's degree to better figure out in what parts of their day and their content area can they expose students to STEM. Again, it's about exposure. It's not about creating engineers or, pushing students into that pathway. It's about problem solving, 21st century skills that any student can benefit and carry over into adulthood. Anybody can benefit from that, and that's what STEM does. Thank you again for coming to my presentation. I hope you got a little bit of nugget from it, learn something new, maybe something you can apply to your own life, or maybe just feel motivated to go out there today and do something engineering-based or problem-solving.
Trojans Talk Research is a monthly spotlight on the research interests of choice faculty presented by Troy University's Office of Sponsored Programs.